מי שברא אבותינו אברהם יצחק ויעקב הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל העומדים המשמר בארצנו וירא אלוקינו
מגבול הלבנון מיד מדבר מצרים ומן הים הגדול עד לבוא הערבה היבשה באוויר ובים הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל
הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל ייתן השם את טובנו הקמם עלינו ניגפים לפניהם הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מקר צרה וצוקה ומקר נגע המחלה וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם ידבה שונאינו תחתיהם ויעטרם בחטא ישועה ועטרת ניצחון וקוים בהם הכתוב כי השם אלוקיכם ההולך עמכם להילחם לכם עם אויביכם להושיע אתכם ונאמר אמן ונאמר אמן ונאמר אמן
היבשה באוויר ובים
הוא יברך את חיילי
צבא ההגנה לישראל
הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל
So we now begin class. Thank you so much for being here. And we're going to be learning more Navi. We left off in chapter 28, and here we go. Let's just take off this because we'll have no more video clips. I'm experimenting with ways to get those little black boxes off the screen. And I'm getting there, I hope. Denise is in charge of telling me after class how I did. Okay, here we go. Oops. Okay. I want to remind you, let's get this guy off the screen. There's much to get off the screen, but we're going to do this. We are going to do this. Okay, let's get this off. Okay. Oh boy, it's like a comedy show. If you saw what's going on with the controls here, but okay, we're going to do it. Let me try to just get that down. Come on. Just give me 1 second more. Okay, it's supposed to be minimized. Okay, here we go. Here we go. In chapter 2 Years ago, when we started Shmuel Aleph, 1 Samuel, you may recall, and we know this from Rosh Hashanah Haftarah as well, Hannah would go every year to Shiloh with her husband Elchanan, and she would cry that she wanted to have a baby. And she cried at the wall, and Eli the Kohen came, and she was blessed with the son, and she promised she would dedicate that boy if God would give her a son. She would bring him back to Eli the Kohen to serve at Shiloh, it wasn't the Beit HaMikdash yet, it was the Mishkan, the tabernacle, before the temple was built in Jerusalem. And he would serve as an assistant, a masquerade, to Eli the Kohen, and eventually he grew to be the next great Kohen. And I just remind you, and you'll see why it comes up in a moment, chapter 2, verse 18, Samuel was engaged in the service of the Lord as an attendant, girded with a linen ephod, ume'il katon, the word me'il, and a small, ta'aselo imo, his mother would make him a little robe for him and bring it up to him every year. She would go up to Shiloh, which is in Samaria, northern part of what's called the West Bank. Wrongly, it's Samaria. And she'd bring a me'il katon, a small coat or robe, and she'd bring it to him every year. For the annual visit on Rosh Hashanah. File that in the back of your mind. His mother would bring him a robe every year, a special me'il, separate from what Eli the Kohen provided him to wear. Back to where we left off, chapter 28. You'll remember he's filled with fright about the forthcoming battle with the Philistines tomorrow. He has a vision of it, and unprecedented in his life, he's just terrified. And I won't go over all of it because we did it last week. But he's so horrified that he doesn't know what to do. He wants to ask the Kohanim through the Urim and Tumim, but he can't go to them because he killed out the whole city of them in Nov, and now nobody among them wants to be near him. The Urim and Tumim, that slip of paper, of parchment that gets put into the ephod, the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol, is with David. And Shaul doesn't know what to do, and so he looks for an oath, someone who brings up ghosts, even though he made that illegal. He had specifically said it's illegal, and I'll kill you, I'll impose the death penalty on anyone who brings up ghosts. But now he's looking for someone to bring up a ghost of Shmuel, the prophet Samuel, who has died. He has nowhere to turn, because we learned at the very beginning of this chapter, Samuel just died. Remember? It was verse 3. Shmuel met vayismedulo kol Yisrael. Samuel just died, and the whole nation lamented him. So Shaul HaMelech, Saul the king, could not go to Kohanim, Kohens, priests, and he couldn't go to the prophet because he's gone. He didn't know where to go. So he's hoping that this woman who says that she excels at raising up the ghosts, but denies doing it because it's illegal and death penalty. But he's advised that there happens to be a woman in Ein Dor, a location called Ein Dor, Ein with an iron, and she raises ghosts. And so he knows that if she sees him coming as dressed like the king of Israel, she'll deny being in the business and hide and all of that. So he disguises himself like a regular guy. He's wearing the equivalent of what today you would call blue jeans and a work shirt and sneakers, whatever they wore in those days, that was the equivalent, so that she wouldn't be on the lookout. She wouldn't be expecting. Here we go. So Shaul said to his men, find me a woman who raises up ghosts. Ishet ba'alat tov. And we learned already, so we won't spend much time on it, that in Leviticus, Vayikra Chafal, chapter 21, verse 27, Torah says, V'isho isha ki yebahem ov. or you don't emote, you want to, a man or woman who raises up ghosts shall be put to death. So now he's asking for such a person, and he's already sent out the word. And so his servants say to him, "Hinei eshet ba'alat ov be'en dor." There is a woman in Ein Dor who raises up ghosts. So Saul disguised himself as an everyday guy. Let's get back up there. I'm still working on this thing to blank out bad spots on the thing, and I'm just getting used to what's involved in it. Okay, but anyway, so he goes, disguises himself, puts on different clothes, and he goes with two men. File that in your mind, that the mother would bring him a me'il, a robe, a coat, when he was a little boy. He was just a little boy. She handed him over to Eli to raise him like his stepson, so he would work and be devoted full time as a Kohen at the Mishkan, at the tabernacle, from childhood. And mom would visit once a year with a coat, a me'il. And file away also that it comes with two men. So there's a threesome. They came to the woman at night and said, "Please pull up a ghost. Vayomer kasami naba'ov. Please bring up a ghost. Va'alili, and raise up it asher ma'alayach, the person I asked for you to raise up." And, typically in that business, if you ever watched movies or TV where they have anything comparable to that, with people with crystal balls and whatnot, usually it's someone calling up a deceased spouse or parent or child, but not necessarily the president of the United States, prime minister of Israel, king of Saudi Arabia, I don't know. Normally, it's just like a local relative that passed away, and whatever it is. The woman said, "I can't do it. You know that King Saul has put a ban and basically wiped out, put all the ghost raisers out of business. Why are you trying to maybe lay a trap to get me killed and stare me?" And this is, I compared it to like these drug deal things where people meet on a park bench, prearranged for a drug buy. And the seller is very careful before he sells drugs to the buyer to make sure it's not an undercover drug cop. And so he sizes him up, how's he dressed, how's he comport himself, and then he takes a chance and he sells the drugs and usually gets away with it. Once in a blue moon, it is a guy from the DEA, and he gets arrested. And what happens to him happens to him. So Saul swears in the name of God. Saul swears by God and says, Chai Hashem. He invokes God's name, that he swears to God. You won't get into trouble over this. So actually, that's true, because he's in charge. He's not telling her. She won't get into trouble. So he can make such an oath without lying. So she says, all right, who do you want me to raise up for you? A relative. He says, raise up the prophet Samuel, bring up Shmuel. And that's heavy duty stuff. And the next thing she knows, Samuel rises up out of her table or her crystal ball or out of thin air, whatever it is, and she lets out a scream. The woman recognized Shmuel. How did she recognize him? We'll find out. And she shrieked and said, why have you deceived me? You're King Saul. Because no one else would have had the power to actually, there's a few things going on here. Number one, she knows very well that she cannot raise up the dead. She cannot raise up ghosts. Newsflash, no one can do that. So she makes money doing it, but she's not really doing it. It's like you see in the movies and on TV. There's somebody in the back room behind the curtain making noises, and then there's smoke and the lights go out, and they project a picture on the screen nowadays with electricity. In the old days, whatever they did with smoke and mirrors. She can't raise the dead. And the next thing you know, she's looking up, and there's the dead. She's shrieking because she can't believe what she herself is seeing. That's what the commentators are explaining, I'm sharing with you. And she perceives that's Samuel the prophet. First of all, he's very, very famous. He was the religious leader of a generation. Whatever your politics, most everyone knows what Joe Biden looks like, what Obama looks like, what even Kamala Harris, what John Kennedy looked like, Lyndon Johnson, if you were around Nixon. I mean, a person like that, the number one person in the country, most people know what's going on. And she, as a ghost raiser, knows the general image in case she has to come up with something comparable. So she screams. She can't believe it because she perceives that's actually Samuel. Okay, so let's continue. So why, and she understands, since she really cannot bring up the dead, the fact that the dead is brought up and it's Samuel tells her this must be King Saul, because who else would, I can't do it. I say I can do it, but I can't. So that must be somebody pretty important if this happened. So the king says, don't be afraid. What do you see? And the rabbis talk about, I'm going to teach you Midrash today, some fascinating Midrash on this. The rabbis tell us, but I was wondering whether I should first teach the Midrash or first the text, and it just reads better if I first do the text. So the apparently she sees Samuel but doesn't hear him. Saul maybe hears him but doesn't see him. So Saul asks, what do you see? He doesn't see whatever it is that she sees. So again, you've seen movies and TV where someone sees, I don't know, a ghost or whatever, and other people in the room don't see it. But Tomer Ha'isha el Shaul, and the woman tells King Saul, Elohim ra'iti olim min ha'aretz, I see a divine being. Elohim literally means God. But she doesn't mean I see God, but I see a God-like, someone divine, someone holier than a regular human coming up. So Shaul cannot see what she sees. Interesting, we'll learn the Midrash on it. Shaul cannot see, the king cannot see. She, again, can see but cannot hear. He will be able to hear, but he cannot see what's going on. So he says, Mo ta'aro. What exactly does he look like? Describe what you see. What does he look like? She says, Ish zaken oleh, v'hu oteh ma'il. It's an elderly man wearing a ma'il, a robe. Saul knew that as long as Prophet Samuel, Shmuel Aleph, as long as his mother was alive, she would come every year with a robe, and out of love, respect for his mother, he would wear that robe. That's my mother's robe that she brought for me. Like Joseph with the striped garment or multicolored garment, whatever. There's discussion about what kind of garment Yaakov gave Yosef. This week's Parsha. The Ketonet Pasim, the striped or multicolored. The rabbis say striped. Andrew Lloyd Webber says multicolored. You decide which rabbinic authority you follow. So he's wearing a robe. Vayeda Shaul ki Shmuelhu. At that moment, Saul knew that is Samuel. He came up from the other world wearing a robe. Even in the other world, he wears his mother's robe. Again, by a robe, I'm not talking about a bathrobe. I'm talking about like a king's robe, right? Like a royal robe. By Kod Apayim Artzav Ishtachu, and Saul, Melech Shaul, prostrates twice to the ground in the general direction of which towards which the lady is looking, although Saul can't see it. Vayomer Shmuel el Shaul, and now Samuel, the prophet, says to Saul, why did you anger me? Why did you vex me, disturb me? Loma hirgastani from roges. I don't know if you ever heard the expression in Yiddish, broiges. He's broiges, Joe is broiges with Sam. Means they're having a fight. They're angry. They're not talking to each other, or they're yelling at each other. They're broiges. They're biroges. They're angry. Why did you, hirgastani? Why did you so upset me? La'alototi, to bring me up from the other world. I'm celebrating paradise. Why do I have to come back to this earth with all its problems? Vayom Shaul, and as you could see, Saul cannot see him, but hears him. The woman, again, does see him, but can't hear him. Vayom Shaul, King Shaul says, Tsarli Ma'od, I did it because I'm in so much. I'm in sorrows. I'm in so much trouble now. I don't know what to do. Uplishtim nolchamim bi. The Philistines are about to engage in a horrific war against me. They've built an army like the Romans in Spartacus. I don't know how I'm going to stand up to them, but I would get strength if I could go to the Kohanim and have them read the Urim and Tumim. But I can't communicate with the Kohanim. I'd get strength if I need you to tell me what's going to happen. God has turned away from me. Anani. Oh, God is not answering my prayers that he communicate with me. Look, I'm not Moses. I'm not a prophet. I'm King Saul. God doesn't, let's say, give me prophecy, but he could come to me in a dream, in a vivid dream that I would know is God communicating by dream. But he's not communicating in any manner. So I don't know what to do. Gabiat Hanviim. I don't have any navis. I don't have any prophets that I can turn to. You just died. Gab b'chalamot, no dreams. The Ekra Elecha. So I had to call you out. I need you to tell me what to do. And Shmuel the prophet from the other world says, why are you asking me? God turned away from you. I mean, basically, that's your answer. What do you expect me to tell you? That if God turned away from you, you already know that. And so, what can I tell you? God has torn away the kingship from you. And he's given it to your colleague, to David. I mean, you don't know this? You did not hearken to God's word, to his voice, because you did not strike down and wipe out Amalek, the Amalekites, when the moment came. Therefore, God, on this day, has done this thing. Your time is up. God will be handing you over tomorrow to the Philistines, you and the people of Israel. Umachar, and tomorrow, ata uvanecha imi, you and your sons, what can I say, will be with me. Where's he? In the afterlife, he's dead. So the good news, bad news. The bad news, he'll be dying tomorrow in battle with his sons. But there is good news. He'll be receiving an eternal reward in the world to come, in paradise, in Gan Eden, with Shmuel Hanavi. Despite having done certain wrongs that we're going to learn more about in the Midrash that we're going to study, despite his having done certain wrongs, he will have eternal reward with Samuel. Saul, immediately, the king, prostrates himself to the floor again in the direction from which he hears the voice that he cannot see, and he accepts the divine judgment. He feared greatly the words that he heard from Samuel. Gam koch lo hayabo, it took away all his strength. if you've ever had a moment in your life where you were terrified, scared, I don't know, God forbid if you were ever held up, or if in the middle of the night there was pounding on your door and thank God they went somewhere else, or if you've ever been in a moment of real terror, all your strength is gone for that moment. You practically can't stand. Kilo achal lechem kol hayom v'chol halayla. And with the war tomorrow, having gotten this prophecy the night before, he has one day to the war. That day, he has no appetite. He's not eating any bread all day and all night. But and the woman who brought up the ghost, or maybe she did not bring up the ghost. Maybe Shmuel, by God's dictate, maybe God sent him to come up and she doesn't know what she did because she didn't really do anything. There is even a rabbinic opinion that he did not appear, that everybody was having an extra worldly kind of, that she was hallucinating because it was so horrifying, and that Saul was imagining this conversation because they were all filled with a dread that's indescribable. But whatever it is, she sees Saul. Now remember, she sees Samuel, doesn't hear, so she doesn't hear the conversation going on, but she sees that something's happening to King Saul in the course of the conversation that's basically knocking him out. Suddenly he can't eat. Suddenly he can't drink. He's got no strength. So she doesn't know what's going on. But she knows it's not good. He is the king of Israel. He has promised her she's not going to get hurt. And so she wants to she's caring about him. And she says to him, let me see what I could do for you. So let's admit this person. Okay. So she says, your handmaid has heard you. I've heard half of the conversation. I don't know who you were talking to. I have a guess based on what I saw, but I heard your part of the conversation and it don't sound good. And I've taken my life in my hands by heeding your request to undertake to bring up Samuel the prophet, and therefore, so please, I did this favor for you, now you do a favor for me and eat something. I'm going to set some food, pat lechem, I'll set some bread and some food for you to eat, and you got to eat. You have to have some strength to go on the way. You're going to pass out right here in my home. By my end. And Shaul, King Saul, didn't want to eat anything. He's got no appetite. He's going to die tomorrow in battle. At least that's the prophecy. With his sons. Albeit he'll be going to paradise. Lo ochal. He says, no, I can't eat. I just can't eat. And his men, the two men that came with him, our rabbis tell us it was Amasa and Avner, his chief of staff of his military, and the brother of the chief of staff, who also was a major general. The chief of staff was Avner ben Ner, Abner the son of Ner, Avner ben Ner, and his brother Amasa ben Ner. And so the two of them and the woman pressed Saul to eat something, and finally ate something, got up, he sat on the bread, and he ate. The woman had a calf, a little bit of a meat, so she said, I'll make you some bread. She also made him some meat. Once you get started with a Jewish mother, you're not getting out with a whole meal, without having a whole meal. I remember, I'm going back 10 years or 15 years, in Louisville, Kentucky, after I finished law school, I clerked for the Honorable Judge Danny Boggs in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit in Louisville. And he's just a wonderful man, and one of the most brilliant federal judges, maybe the most brilliant. Many people say he's the most brilliant judge. Too brilliant to have been named to the Supreme Court, because what can I tell you? So, but he was actually on the short list when Clarence Thomas was named. By the time there were new openings, he was considered a little bit older, and they want to get a good 20, 30 years out of a nomination because so much trouble to get the nominee. Anyway, so Judge Boggs, we get all the federal judges, appellate judges get 3 clerks a year. And after about 20 years on the bench, he had 20 times 3, 60 clerks, and his office made a 20th anniversary, and they invited the 60 clerks, and most of us flew in from all over the country because if you worked the year for Judge Boggs, you just owe him so much for life. He was just so wonderful, and he was a career maker. If you worked for him, you were set for life. You could get a job at any law firm if you told him you clerked for Judge Boggs. Anyway, I went there and I brought my daughter, Kinneret. I've got 3 daughters and a son, and I treated one of my kids to, it's random, I treated each of the kids to one special trip, just the kid alone with daddy, Abba. It was her turn, so she got to go to Louisville with me. So we went to Louisville for that weekend, and Sunday, I said to her after there was a morning program, Tony and I, so we're going to drive around and see a little bit of Kentucky that we did a year ago, or a few years ago. So anyway, as I'm about to leave, Judge Boggs' wife, Judy, says to me, she's also a judge. She's a federal judge also, Judge Judy. And so Judge Judy says, Dov, we're not letting you leave without, I have to give you something. And she's Jewish, and she knows from kosher, and she arranged from the one kosher bagel place. So she had some kosher. She said, take 2, 3 bagels. So I said, Judy, it's not necessary. She said, I'm not letting you go without 3 bagels, 1 for you, 1 for your daughter, and 1 for whichever of you gets hungry first. I said, okay, 3 bagels, then we got to go. So next thing I know, she comes with a box. Got bagels. If I'm giving you bagels, I've got to give you boxes. I got to give you tubs of cream cheese, like 4 different kosher certified cream cheeses. The lox spread, and the strawberry spread, and the plain kind, and the non-fat kind. And you decide which cream cheeses you want. And since I'm giving you cream cheeses, you have to have tomatoes and salad. Anyway, she gave me this whole box, filled up half the trunk. That's what happens when a Jewish mother says, here, just before you leave, take a bagel. So what's going on here is that next thing you know, she's giving him meat, and she slaughters it. She's quite a chick. She doesn't only bring up the dead, but she kills. And she took flour and kneaded it and baked unleavened cakes, matzahs, because there's not a lot of time. He's in a rush. He's got things to do, people to see, places to go. She set this before Saul and the men. They ate, they rose, they left the same night. Let's learn Midrash. So let's go here. This is from Midrash Agada, and it's in Leviticus, Vayikra, the Midrash 21, Chaf Aleph. And the reason it's in Leviticus is that it has to do with Kohanim and discussions of Kohans, and has to discuss also where was the source that in the Torah that you're not allowed to bring an ov, man or woman brings up a ghost. That's in Leviticus. So the Midrash is on this in Leviticus. And as they talk about, you're not allowed to bring up not allowed to have a ghost bringer-upper. So it brings them to discuss in great detail the story of what we learned here. Let's take a look. As always, don't be intimidated by the Hebrew. That's for me to be intimidated by the Hebrew. The good thing is, even if I don't know what I'm reading, I can make up anything I like and you'll believe me. But don't worry, I give you the real thing. And moral Kohanim, it's commenting on the words, speak to the Kohanim, speak to the priests. Okay. Now it says, V'ish o isha, the Gomer. It says a man or a woman, ish o isha, a man or a woman who has a ghost, brings up a ghost. So they're first of all commenting, that's not the usual terminology. Usual terminology in Hebrew, if it say is a man, that includes a woman. Until modern English feminism and the way we talk a little differently now, it used to be, you all know, those of us that are a little bit older all know, it used to be that the male pronoun would also be for, you would say that, I don't know if, if a person comes to your house to clean your oven and he cleans it with Easy Off, you really have to be old if you know what Easy Off is. So, but you would say he, and it applies to women too. So that's how Hebrew works. So it's unusual that it says if a man or a woman is involved in bringing up a ghost. So umayyan zeh etzel zeh. So the Midrash says, why is it saying man or a woman? What does one have to do with the other? God foresaw that one day Saul will be king of Israel. Excuse me. And in the future, he's going to kill off all the Kohens, all the priests. And he's going to get angry, very angry. God's going to get angry. And God is not going to communicate with him. And so in the future, Saul will end up, he will be seeking a ghost raiser. And because he's going to be terrified of these armed forces that are rising up against the armies of Israel, he's going to look for a ghost raiser, as it says, and he looked for a ghost raiser. And etc. And since he's going to encounter her, that's why it says a man or a woman. It is in a hidden way predicting Saul and that lady. Okay, fine. So he says, Amarla et Shmuel ha'alili. So in the text we learned tonight, he says to the lady, raise up Samuel. Kevan shira'at Shmuel oleh nizdaza'ad. But as soon as Samuel actually came up, everybody in the room went crazy. The woman went crazy. I've explained it to you. I gave you the heads up to help make it more explicable when I taught it to you, but I took it from these Midrashim. The woman went crazy because she never really raised up anybody in her life. So she couldn't believe it. And he went crazy because he never saw a person raised up from the dead. So they're all screaming. Viloma za'aka, and why did she scream? She saw what she never saw before in her life. Okay? And then the Midrash says, but isn't that what she does for a living? Raising up the dead? So why should she be excited? She saw it. He came up in a crazy way. The way she would raise the dead is she would raise the dead upside down. However it is that in the days before projecting pictures, they would raise up through smoke and mirrors something looking like a dead whatever. It would be upside down with the head on the bottom and the feet on top, like he's standing on his head, which will also make it easier for the so-called dead person she's raising up, for the relatives not to be sure whom they're looking at, because they really wouldn't be able to see the face because it's upside down. And what shocked her on top of everything else, this time, a deceased is really coming up the real way with the head up top, and you can see the face and the feet on the bottom. So she can't believe what's going on. Okay, so now the rabbis say, Amru Rabotenu Zichronon Levracha, or Zelishanam. Our rabbis tell as follows: at the point when Samuel actually was being raised up from paradise to come back, Nityare Miyomadin, he was afraid. Samuel the prophet, the righteous Samuel, the tzaddik in paradise, was afraid. Why is he being removed right now from paradise? That doesn't happen to anybody. That's in the eternal reward. He was afraid. Is he about to be judged? The halach Moshe, as he was called to go, he found Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses from the Bible, from the Torah. his spirit in the world to come found Moses. That's the tzaddikim and they're each other. They're together. They said, Moses, I'm afraid. What's happening? Bo imi, will you please come with me if I'm being summoned to God Almighty for judgment? I don't. Amar lo Moshe. Moses said to him in paradise, what you, Samuel the prophet, are afraid of judgment? What in the world could you possibly have done in your lifetime that you would be afraid of being judged? You were perfect. You were like perfect. Nobody's perfect, but you were as close as they come to perfect. Omarlo, imkain, bo imi. So Shmuel said, nice, but would you come with me anyway? And that's why the lady said, a divine spirit is coming. Do you remember I showed you the word Elohim? I said the word Elohim means God. And the lady said that she saw God. Let's see if I get it real quickly. And I won't waste a lot of your time here. And she said, Elohim Ra'iti. She said, I saw Elohim. Now, the word for God, Elohim, also is a plural word. It means one God, but it's structured plurally. Some say that's to include God's male and female aspects. Other understandings as well. In a way, it's like the word scissors in English. It's actually a plural word. You don't say, can I have a scissor? You ask for scissors. You ask, can I borrow a pair of pants? But it's really one thingy of pants, so one thingy of scissors. So that's kind of the Hebrew word for God. Okay, so she said, I see, and it's a plural. So trei mashma, in other words, she actually saw two spirits, Samuel and Moses. All right. So immediately she said to Saul, why did you fool me? And then Saul said, why have you gotten me all this angry? Now look what you did to me. You upset me. You vexed me, says Samuel. From heaven, I was at peace. Now I'm afraid of the day of judgment. Now it turns out it's only to come to earth, but who wants to do that? And so Rabbi Hanina says, Rabbi Hanina. As an aside, Rabbi Hanina learns from this, Mikan atal lomed shafilu hatzadikim et yarim yomadin. Even the most righteous tzaddik fears being judged by God after death for the way he lived a life, or she. So how much more should we? How much more should we be careful when we live our lives to try our best? Because one day we're going to be judged. A lot of people, probably the majority of people think they just put you in a box, they close the box, they put you 6 feet under, and that's it. End of story. It's not end of story. Your soul is eternal. It comes before God for judgment. And God is loving, God is merciful, and God understands how we were born, what families we were born into, what challenges we encountered. Not everybody had the same opportunity as everybody else. Different people started different parts on the racetrack. The son of a great rabbi will start on a higher place than the son of, let's say, someone non-Jewish who takes on a righteous life. I mean, God, that's God's job. We can't judge people. We have to be very careful. You could look at Hamas and you could say they're all going to hell. That's an easy call. You don't have to spend a lot of time on that. But with the case of most people in the world, you don't know. You don't know why people are the way they are. You don't know what their problem. You don't know what was done to them as kids, what happened in their marriages. You don't know what they've been through, what kind of illnesses they walked around, who they lost. We don't know. God judges. But Rabbi Hanina says, if the prophet Samuel is that worried about being judged after life, after he's already enjoying paradise, wow, something to think about. Okay, so I'm skipping some text here. To summarize, King Saul says to Samuel, I called you up because I'm in real trouble. There's going to be a war and God's not responding and there are no prophets and no dreams. And then Shmuel says, so why are you asking me? And Amarlo Shmuel Shavaya Shemimach. So Samuel the prophet says, till now God was always with you. Now he's not with you, so connect those dots. Do you have to ask me? I mean, Techilah haraktet neviyav, ve'im kohenav. So you went, you killed out all the priests, all the Kohanim. So look what you did. Sha'al mimcha dina Kohanim. So now it's time to pay. You should know tomorrow you're going to die. Go to war tomorrow and don't flee from your destiny, because you're going to be killed tomorrow. So go down with dignity. You are going to die at that battle tomorrow. You cannot escape it. The best I can say is I want to give you some piyus. I want to give you some comfort. Tomorrow, you and your sons will be with me. You know what a mechitza is? Like in shul, there's a partition. One side the men, one side the women in prayer. So men and women don't sit together in an Orthodox service. Churches have mixed seating. Therefore, Reformed temples have mixed seating, conservative, but Orthodox separate seating, men and women. A mechitza is a partition. So in the same way, there's a partition between heaven and hell, between paradise and punishment. And hell, we don't have the image. We don't know what hell is exactly. I'm just using a general term. Perdition, I don't know. We don't know. We don't have it's not a red devil with horns and a pitchfork, and we don't know what goes on in the punishment, but it's bad. And there's a partition. And you'll be on my side of the partition. So it says immediately, Saul prostrated down, Miyad Amar Moshe, Lifnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and now Moses, who was witness to all this, said to God, Ribono Shel Olam, Master of the universe, Techilat Melech Shehimlachta, Tachlit Melech Shehimlachta, Al Banecha Tapiloto Biat Plishtim Uvanav. So this man that you made king of Israel, you're going to make him fall at the hand of the Philistines with his sons? Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe, God responded to Moses, Moshe, Chalila La'el, Merasha v'Shadai Me'avel, Merasha v'Shadai Me'avel, citing Job 34. God forbid that God should do anything unjust. Rather, what a man does, let's understand. Men of understanding, listen to me. Wickedness be far from God. God Chalila, God forbid that God would do wickedness. Not a good definition, translation. Or that God should do, God forbid that God should do wickedness, or God should do wrongdoing. Rather, God, he pays a man according to his actions. Person gets the punishment based on what he did. So he killed out the Kohanim. It's now it's time. Moshe Chayev Shaul b'shtayim. Now Moses understood that Shaul had sinned by seeking a ghost raiser-upper, and also that he killed out the Kohanim. But we're going to learn a little bit more from another Midrash. Let's take a look at the Midrash. Wait seconds. Okay, so we're going to go to the other Midrash, and this is from Midrash Shmuel. The Midrash having to do with Samuel. Section 24 of Parasha 24. A lot of it is the same as what I just read you. A lot of it is different, so I'm going to just skip through. All right. Rabbi Yehoshua de Sichnin, B'Shem Rabbi Levi. So this Rabbi Joshua said in the name of Rabbi Levi, you know, they always cite a rabbi who learned something from another rabbi. Whenever he quotes it, he always cites his source. No plagiarism in Judaism. They learned that from the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, that when Mordechai told Esther there's a plot to kill the king, and she reported back to her husband, the king, there's an assassination plot, Bigtan and Tarish are plotting to kill you. It says that she told him b'shem Mordechai. She cited Mordechai the Jew as her source. And therefore it was written in the King's Chronicles that his life was saved by the inside information provided by Mordechai the Jew. Later on, when Haman was going to kill out the Jews, and Mordechai was praying, and the king couldn't sleep, and had his chronicles read to him, and they read from the chronicles about the time he almost was assassinated, but Mordechai the Jew saved his life. And thus began the process by which the king rewarded Mordechai and had an affinity to the Jews and everything. And from this we learned you should always quote whoever gives you good learning, good information. Rabbi Yeshua cites Rabbi Levi, Mutav hayalad rosh b'urim v'tumim. The king should have inquired of the Kohanim the Urim and Tumim, the slip of parchment and the breastplate. Shalmala v'lo ba'oviot yidoni b'mata. He should not have been asking to raise up ghosts, but he messed it up because he killed out of the Kohanim in the city of Nov. So they say ulema haya Shaul domeh ba'oto sha'ah. So there he was. King Saul put a ban, a capital punishment ban on pain of death, anyone who raises up ghosts. Now he's looking for someone to raise up ghosts. So the rabbi says, you know what that's like? It's like l'shilton shenichnas lemedina, a tyranny, a dictatorship, conquering power, empire, conquers another country. Gozar v'amar kol hatarnagolim hazacharim sheyesh kan yishchatu, or yishachatu. And the tyrant who conquers, the emperor who conquers this land, issues a royal decree. All male chickens, all roosters, are to be slaughtered immediately, because I say so. L'shacharit Omar, as he's preparing to go to sleep, thinking about tomorrow morning in an era before alarm clocks and smartphones, and Siri and Alexa, the emperor says to his guys, pull a rooster for me to wake me up in the morning. Cock-a-doodle-doo. Amar ein tarnagol sheyikari. And they say you gave the instruction to kill out every rooster in the kingdom, the emperor. So we just killed out all the roosters. Aren't you the one that just gave the order to kill out all the roosters? In the same way, Saul cleared out all the ghost raisers. And now, and now he's saying, find me a ghost raiser. He's got himself a problem. So, they explain monin paginaka. What does that mean? Well, let's take a look. Paginaka, put on commoner's garments. As I said, if we were talking today, it would be blue jeans and a work shirt. In those days, who knows what it was? Garments. All right. So it was he and his two men. I explained to you, it's his chief of staff and the brother, also a general. As Rabbi Abahu said, Limaditacha Torah derech Arutz. The Torah teaches proper behavior. Shelo yehei adam yotzei l'derech. A man should not go out on a journey accompanied by fewer than two other people. Pachot mishnayim. Shelo yehei adam yotzei l'derech pachot mishnayim. No person should go on a journey. In those days, they did not have cars or trains, planes, and automobiles. They'd go on a wagon or they would walk. Figure a wagon. You should have two people with them. A man who goes with only one other person on a journey, with a servant, by the end of the journey, he will be a servant to the servant that he brought with him. Because the servant will probably have to end up saving his life. And the servant and he will both know he owes everything to the servant. You're a dead man if not for me. If you bring two people, then you don't owe your life to this one or that one necessarily. Each one takes credit. Okay, so you should bring two. Rabbi Abahu. So this rabbi said, let's see. For example, Avraham v'Shaul, we learned it from Abraham also. When Abraham went to bring Yitzchak to be bound on the Temple Mount, Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac, where at the last moment the angel said, lay not thy hand on the lad, don't hurt Yitzchak. But on the way, it says he went with two men. In Genesis, Breshit, Chafbet 22, Vayashkem Avram b'boker v'chavosh chamoro. Abraham got up in the morning, he saddled his donkey, Vayikach et shnei narav ito, and he brought two men with him, Ve'et Yitzchak b'no, and Yitzchak. So we see the proper behavior is you go with an entourage of at least two. The Midrash teaches that he went with Eliezer, his major domo, and with Yishmael, his other son, the one from Hagar. So he went with two. Avraham vayikach two, Shaul vayelech hu ushnei nashim, and he went with two. Okay, fine. Let's go forward. We're running out of time. We'll grab a few extra minutes and we'll wrap it together. So he says to her, please bring up, Samuel. So Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Lamad Averdoma. So he says he's swearing to God. Vayishba Allah Shaul b'Hashem. You remember I pointed out, he's swearing, he's invoking God. So there's a paradox here. He's doing something incredibly sinful, not only violating his own decree, but an explicit Torah commandment. You're not allowed to have people raising up ghosts. And he's going to a ghost raiser, making her a vow in the name. He's invoking God's holy name in a vow to the lady, saying, I'm not going to hurt you for raising up a ghost. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish Lamad Davar Doma. The rabbis love to make comparisons. They love to give examples. That's why I do that a lot. After years and years of studying in yeshiva to be ordained a rabbi, to get smicha, it's like so many years of learning where rabbis are always in the text offering examples. It's like built into me. I give examples. I mean, for example, I give examples. So what's this an example? He says, for him to invoke God's holy name in a vow to a ghost raiser who he should be killing, that's comparable Leisha Shahayatana Nituna Itzelohav Ahuva. It's like a married woman who is secretly consorting with another man, and she makes him a promise, and she promises by swearing in the name of her husband. I swear in the name of my husband, and she's saying that to this guy that she's consorting with improperly. So that's what that's like. I remember when I was practicing law, I'll never forget this. It's like such a life lesson. I know I'm over time, so I'll have to wrap it up. So I'm practicing law, minding my own business, trying to be a good lawyer. I'm an junior associate, my first or second year. They tell me we're assigned. The way it works in a very big law firm is they're constantly dropping you emails and stuff saying, partners saying, I just got a case and I need to staff up. I need 2-3 attorneys. Are you available? I'd like you on my case. Another one. And at some point when you're overloaded, you say, sorry, right now I'm committed to this one, that one, but as soon as something opens, I'll let you know. And so anyway, she calls me, and this is a female partner. I won't mention her name, not that any of you knows her. And she calls me in and she said, come in. She says, look, you're going to be on this case and I'll tell you more about the case, but I want you to be in on this phone call right now. I'm talking to opposing counsel. We're going to have an early discussion about the case. In this discussion, you'll pick up a lot of what the case is about and you'll get a feel for the opposing counsel. So I'm listening. She tells him I've got my junior associate on, puts me on speakerphone. And this guy, as he's talking, he's saying like his client didn't do it. And we're suing and saying, oh, yes, he did. Oh, no, he didn't. Oh, yes, he did. And that's what you do for a living when you're a lawyer. So he finally says that he swears on his children's eyes. Now, I never heard that one. I've heard a lot of things. I've heard of even invoking the Holy One. I never heard of someone swearing on the eyes of their children. That's horrible. Because first of all, he's lying. We knew he's lying because he doesn't know it, but we've got evidence that he's going to find out later in the case that we've been sitting on the evidence. We know what we know. He doesn't know that we know what we know. But he's lying and he's swearing on his children's eyes. So, and then she looks at me like, have you ever heard that one before? So in the same way, it's like swearing on your, it's like swearing on your husband to your illicit lover. Anyway, wrapping it up, we'll do more midrash, but let's let's see. I don't want to keep you too long. I'll make a note of where I am right now, but I want to be sure. Okay, we're going to, in our next class, the one other thing I want to wrap in here for the next class is the 5 sins of King Saul. The Midrash lays out 5 sins of King Saul, for which in the aggregate, he was punished to die at the hands of the Philistines with his sons. The implication being there wasn't any 1 or 2 of those sins. Those sins might have been enough for him to lose the kingship to David, the dynasty, but his death at that battle is because of the aggregate of 5 sins. And many of them you have studied with me. Off the top of my head, I'll show you more in the text. But he was supposed to kill out the Amalekites. He didn't. He killed out the priests. He wasn't supposed to do that. Not supposed to call up the ghost raiser. So there's 3 right there. And there are 2 more, and we'll go back to it. So I want to thank you so much for